The announcement reverberated across the globe. The world was stunned, caught off guard by the sudden turn of events. News outlets scrambled to confirm the reports, analysts rushed to offer their perspectives, and citizens everywhere paused to absorb the implications. As President Donald Trump, in a move that surprised many, announced a ceasefire. The declaration came unexpectedly, given the recent escalation of hostilities. This ceasefire was to be implemented between Israel and Iran, two nations locked in a long-standing and complex geopolitical struggle. The rivalry between these two powers has been a constant source of instability in the Middle East, with proxy conflicts and simmering tensions threatening to erupt into full-scale war. The announcement came after 12 days of escalating conflict, a period marked by heightened military activity and increasingly bellicose rhetoric. The world had watched with growing anxiety as the situation spiraled, fearing a wider regional conflagration. Trump, speaking from the Oval Office in a televised address to the nation, sought to project an image of strength and resolve. He presented the ceasefire as a testament to his administration's leadership and its commitment to maintaining peace and stability in the region. Trump framed the agreement as a strategic victory, a triumph of diplomacy over conflict. He emphasized the importance of strong leadership in achieving this outcome, suggesting that his personal involvement had been crucial in bringing the two sides to the negotiating table. He explicitly credited his direct intervention, highlighting his personal phone calls and meetings with leaders from both Israel and Iran. He asserted that his personal relationships and negotiating skills had been instrumental in breaking the deadlock and paving the way for a peaceful resolution. He also acknowledged and thanked the diplomatic efforts of Qatar, recognizing their role as a key mediator in the process. Qatar's behind-the-scenes diplomacy had been essential in facilitating communication and building trust between the parties. The ceasefire followed targeted strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, a move that had sharply escalated tensions and drawn international condemnation. These strikes were met with retaliatory missile attacks, further fueling the cycle of violence and bringing the region closer to all-out war. This dangerous exchange pushed the region to the brink of a full-scale conflict, raising fears of a humanitarian crisis and wider geopolitical instability. The White House portrayed this intervention as proof of American strength, a demonstration of its ability to project power and influence on the global stage. They also highlighted it as an example of decisive diplomacy, showcasing the administration's commitment to resolving conflicts through negotiation and dialogue. Despite the White House's optimistic assessment, skepticism lingered worldwide, with many questioning the long-term viability of the ceasefire. Relief was palpable in many quarters, particularly among those who had feared the worst. Yet many questioned whether this was a true breakthrough, a genuine step towards lasting peace, or simply a temporary reprieve. The underlying issues fueling the conflict remained unresolved, leading many to believe that this was just a temporary pause in a deep-rooted rivalry. The world now waited to see, with bated breath, if the fragile truce would hold, or if it would crumble under the weight of long-standing animosities and unresolved grievances. The future remained uncertain. The 12-day war erupted from decades of animosity, but this time, direct strikes replaced shadowy proxy battles. Israel, with U.S. backing, launched preemptive attacks on Iran's key nuclear facilities, claiming an imminent nuclear threat. Iran denied the accusations, insisting its program was peaceful, but responded with ballistic missiles targeting the U.S. aludeidairbase in Qatar. The retaliation was measured, symbolic, not catastrophic, signaling resolve without inviting all-out war. Mass evacuations and air raid sirens gripped both nations as the world watched a dangerous standoff unfold. The crisis underscored how quickly old hostilities could ignite a regional catastrophe. The conflict's opening salvo, a series of calculated strikes designed to cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions and reshape the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. These initial actions were more than just military maneuvers. They were a declaration, a point of no return in a long-simmering shadow war. Joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Fordo, a deeply buried and heavily fortified nuclear facility, marked a significant escalation. The precision and intensity of the attack signaled a clear intent to dismantle Iran's capacity to develop nuclear weapons. Natanz, another key nuclear site, became a target, its sensitive infrastructure vulnerable to the coordinated assault. The damage inflicted was substantial, setting back Iran's nuclear program and sending a powerful message about the consequences of pursuing such ambitions. And Isfahan, a city housing critical research and development facilities, also felt the sting of the strikes. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a comprehensive strategy to degrade Iran's nuclear capabilities across multiple fronts. These coordinated attacks shattered taboos and escalated the shadow war into open confrontation. The rules of engagement had changed, and the region braced itself for a new era of heightened tensions and unpredictable actions. Iran's missile strike on aludeidairbase, a vital U.S. military installation in Qatar, was a bold warning, a direct response to the attacks on its nuclear facilities. It was a calculated risk, designed to demonstrate Iran's resolve and its capacity to retaliate. This strike was carefully calibrated to avoid massive U.S. retaliation, aiming to inflict damage without crossing the threshold that would trigger a full-scale war. The message was clear. Iran would not back down. Both sides engaged in psychological warfare, a battle of nerves and perceptions aimed at influencing public opinion and shaping the narrative of the conflict. Israeli jets patrolled near Iran, a show of force intended to deter further aggression and reassure allies in the region. These patrols served as a constant reminder of Israel's military capabilities and its commitment to defending its interests. Meanwhile, missile defenses were on high alert, poised to intercept any incoming threats and protect civilian populations. The deployment of advanced missile defense systems underscored the seriousness of the situation and the potential for further escalation. And air raid sirens kept civilians on edge, a constant reminder of the ever-present danger and the fragility of peace. The psychological impact of these alerts was significant, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty. The world's nerves frayed as oil prices spiked, reflecting the growing anxiety about the potential for a wider conflict that could disrupt global energy supplies. And airlines rerouted flights, fearing a wider war that could endanger civilian aircraft and disrupt international travel. The ripple effects of the conflict were felt far beyond the immediate region. Diplomacy intensified, as world leaders scrambled to find a way to de-escalate the crisis and prevent a full-blown war, with U.S. officials framing the conflict as a necessary reset of regional power, arguing that it was essential to contain Iran's ambitions and restore stability to the Middle East. The region teetered on a knife's edge, with the potential for miscalculation and unintended consequences looming large, where a single misstep could have triggered global disaster, plunging the world into a conflict with far-reaching and devastating consequences. The war's true danger lay in its unpredictability, the inherent uncertainty of a conflict driven by complex geopolitical factors and deep-seated animosities, and the ever-present risk of escalation, the potential for the conflict to spiral out of control and lead to a catastrophic outcome. The Trump administration's direct involvement in the strikes marked a dramatic shift from past U.S. policy. The White House argued that only force could halt Iran's nuclear ambitions, betting that a sharp blow would force Tehran to negotiate. After the strikes, Trump pivoted to peacemaker, brokering a ceasefire with Israel and leveraging Qatar to reach Iran. The administration claimed victory, touting the operation as a validation of Trump's tough, deal-making approach. Yet, beneath the bravado, the risk of uncontrollable escalation loomed large. Iran's restrained response was seen as strategic, not submissive, and the ceasefire felt more like a pause than a resolution. The underlying hostility remained, leaving the future uncertain. With no direct U.S.-Iranian dialogue, Qatar emerged as the indispensable intermediary. Qatari diplomats, led by Prime Minister Mohammed al-Thani, navigated the delicate negotiations, ensuring both sides could claim victory without losing face. The ceasefire's core Iran would halt retaliation first, followed by a pause in Israeli operations 12 hours later. This sequencing allowed each side to save face and claim success to their domestic audiences. Qatar's unique ties to both Washington and Tehran made this fragile agreement possible. Their quiet diplomacy was the linchpin that pulled the region back from the brink. In a region defined by conflict, Qatar's role proved that dialogue can still make the difference. After Trump's announcement, both Israel and Iran responded with caution and mistrust. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu confirmed ongoing talks, but insisted military operations would continue until all objectives were met. His statements balanced support for diplomacy with a warning that Israel's right to self-defense remained non-negotiable. In Tehran, officials denied a final agreement, demanding Israel halt aggression first and framing their stance as deterrence, not concession. Both sides' statements revealed a gap between Washington's narrative and the reality on the ground. The ceasefire was fragile, with each capital reserving the right to resume hostilities. The war of words continued, even as the guns fell silent. The final hours leading up to the ceasefire agreement were fraught with tension, a palpable sense of anticipation hanging in the air. The entire region held its breath, aware that any misstep could plunge them into deeper conflict. Diplomats worked tirelessly behind the scenes, while on the ground military forces remained on high alert, prepared for any eventuality. This period was particularly marked by Iran's very public ultimatum, a firm declaration broadcast across international channels. The ultimatum stated in no uncertain terms that Israel must cease all attacks by 4 a.m. local time or face a significant escalation in hostilities. The world watched as the clock ticked down, each second amplifying the tension. As the deadline rapidly approached, the pressure mounted exponentially. Every movement, every communication was scrutinized for signs of what was to come. In the moments before the appointed hour, both sides engaged in what appeared to be a series of final, desperate strikes, a last-ditch effort to gain leverage before the ceasefire took effect. Reports indicated that Iran launched a strike against aludeidairbase, a critical strategic location. Simultaneously, Israel continued its operations, focusing on what were described as Iranian nuclear sites, actions that further inflamed the already volatile situation. These last volleys of attacks and counterattacks underscored the incredibly high stakes involved and highlighted the urgent need for a diplomatic breakthrough to prevent further bloodshed and regional destabilization. The announcement of the ceasefire, brokered with international assistance, came from President Trump just as the critical deadline expired, a moment of immense relief for many. Qatar's crucial mediation efforts played a pivotal role in helping to halt further violence and bring the warring parties to the negotiating table. Their diplomatic intervention proved to be the key to de-escalation. The fact that no new Israeli strikes were reported after 4 a.m. offered a glimmer of hope, suggesting that the ceasefire agreement might actually hold. This absence of further military action signaled that the truce, however fragile, had a chance of succeeding and preventing further escalation. Yet, despite the declared ceasefire, the unsettling sound of air raid alarms continued to echo in some areas, and a pervasive sense of uncertainty lingered in the air. This left civilians understandably wary and anxious about the possibility of renewed conflict, unsure if the hard-won peace would last. The uneasy calm that settled over the region was a stark testament to the dangerous game of brinkmanship that had been played, and the incredibly razor-thin margin that separated the world from all-out war and a fragile, uncertain peace. Turning a ceasefire into lasting peace is fraught with challenges. The agreement's phased implementation, first Iran, then Israel, was designed to build trust but also left room for miscalculation. Ongoing military operations and ambiguous timelines created risks of accidental escalation. Without a formal treaty, and with conflicting statements from both sides, doubts about the truce's durability persisted. The core issues, Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional influence, Israel's security concerns, remained unresolved. Proxy groups allied with Iran, like Hezbollah, were not directly addressed, threatening to undermine the ceasefire. For now, the peace felt more like a pause, with the specter of renewed violence ever present. The ceasefire's announcement rippled across the Middle East, offering relief but also raising new uncertainties. If it holds, the truce could stabilize energy markets and spare civilians further suffering. Yet, the precedent of direct U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran has changed the regional calculus. Some see the ceasefire as a win for coercive diplomacy. Others fear it will embolden hardliners in Tehran. The underlying disputes, nuclear ambitions, proxy wars, regional influence, remain unresolved. Without deeper dialogue, this ceasefire risks being just another brief pause in a cycle of conflict. The region stands at a crossroads, hoping for peace but bracing for the next storm.